All right, I think we're ready to make a start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first NELI Programme webinar of the new year of 2024-25. I really hope that the new year and the new term has got off to a good start for everybody. My name is Sarah Hearn and I work as part of the NELI team at Oxford and Assessment. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you all today about how you can effectively support language in your school this year. I know that some of you are going to have been delivering NELI for several years now. Some of you might be completely brand new to the programme. But regardless of your experience, I really hope that today's session will be useful for everybody. And by the end of it, you'll sort of feel ready and prepared to go into your NELI programme for this year. And also, I want you to feel comfortable that you know where to go for help if you need it. So before we get going, just to let you know what you can expect from today's session, we'll probably be here until about 20 past 4. I usually try to keep it to half an hour, and I usually end up overrunning. So I'll say it's about 35 minutes or so. Then I'm going to spend about the first 25 minutes or so kind of covering the main topics of the webinar, which I'll run through shortly. And then there'll be a Q&A at the end where I will cover some of the questions that were submitted by you guys when you registered for the session today. But as usual, we have our support team on hand to help as well. So if you have any questions at all, please pop them into the Q&A, and Kevin is on hand to answer them as we go. And as usual, your cameras and your microphones are automatically set to off, so you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, just if you want to submit any questions, it will need to come through the Q&A. Also, the webinar is being recorded, and we'll send the recording to you afterwards, and we'll also send it to anybody who wasn't able to attend. Okay, so I thought I would start off just by getting to know the group that we have with us today a little bit better. So in a moment, I will launch a poll, which will flash up on your screen. There are going to be 3 questions, but you'll only need to answer 2 of them. The first question is about how long you have been delivering, your school's been involved in delivering the NELI programme. And depending on whether it's your first year this year or whether you've delivered it before, that will affect whether you answer question 2 or question 3. So I'll just launch that now, and then hopefully it'll be a bit clearer what I mean. 1 second. Okay, so hopefully that's up on your screen now. So yes, so the first question is, how many years has your school delivered the NELI programme? And if you have delivered it before, then please then go on to answer question 2. But if it's your very first time getting involved in the NELI programme, your school's very first time getting involved in the NELI programme, then please jump straight on to question 3 after that. Okay, so I'll just give it a few more moments for everybody to answer that question. And then I'll be able to share the results with you. I'll just give it another 10 seconds or so because I can see some people are still responding. Definitely got more people who have delivered NELI before, so that's great to see people coming back. Okay, I'll end it there and then we can see. I'll share. Hopefully I'm sharing the results, so hopefully you can see what I'm looking at. But what I can see is that there's a real spread. So we do have quite a few people who are here for the first time, so welcome. But we have lots of people as well who've delivered before, including quite a few of you who've delivered 3 or 4 years, or even more, 5+ years for a couple of you. So that's really exciting. So welcome back, those of you who have been doing this for quite a while now. And for those of you who have delivered NELI before, You've said that some of the main benefits that you've seen from the programme, unsurprisingly, is an improvement in expressive and receptive language. So that's fantastic. That's exactly what we hope to see. Another really popular one is that you're seeing that children are showing more confidence to participate in classroom activities. So that's fantastic. And the next most popular one is that there's been a improvement in staff knowledge of oral language development. So that's really exciting as well. And for those of you who are brand new to delivering NELI, again, unsurprisingly, you're really hoping to see improvements in expressive and receptive language. So that of course makes sense. But you're also hoping to see more confidence, more or better friendships, improved staff knowledge, and a few people wanting to see an improvement in behaviour as well. So that's really fantastic. And I hope that we'll be able to talk through some of those aspects today. And that as you start delivering NELI, you will definitely start seeing those improvements very quickly. So that's fantastic. Thank you for taking part in that. All right, so today I'm going to provide a very short introduction to oral language and why early intervention and enrichment for language is so important. And I'll follow that with a recap of the NELI programme timeline for those of you who are new to it. And then I'll go into each sort of core component of the programme in a little bit more detail and provide some key steps that will help you to get started with each of them. Okay, so I always like to start with the question of what is oral language, and it sounds maybe like a bit of an obvious one, but I think it's really important to establish that we're all talking about the same thing here, because by oral language I mean understanding and producing spoken language, not written language. And I think that's often what people jump to when they think of language, and especially when they think of language comprehension, they kind of jump straight into reading comprehension, which of course I understand why that's going to be a priority for so many of you, but what we really need to talk about here is that before you can even begin to sort of understand what you're reading or produce written language, you need to be able to understand spoken language and produce spoken language. So that's the focus of the NELI programme, and that's the focus of what we're talking about here today. So why do you think that it's important to have good oral language skills? If you have good oral language skills, what does that enable you to do? If you pop your suggestions into the Q&A box, then we can have a look at your suggestions in a moment. But just to sort of get you thinking about that, why is oral language important? And do you know what? It's really not actually that easy to sort of develop these good oral language skills, because we have really high expectations of children from pretty much the moment that they enter school. We expect them to be able to kind of to listen to what people are saying to them, to kind of direct their attention, to be able to listen, but also then follow instructions and act on what they're hearing, to be able to speak clearly and kind of clearly express themselves, their thoughts, their emotions, and also not just communicate one-to-one, but also to be able to do all of this sometimes in front of their whole class. So there's that real confidence aspect there as well, which is clearly on a lot of you guys' minds based on the poll that we just did. And of course, at the age of sort of 4 or 5, as children are coming into reception, their sort of language is developing at different rates, and that's completely to be expected, as with everything else. But it is important to be able to identify those children who are really falling behind where we would expect them to be at any given age, so that we can put the appropriate support in place. And that's what we're all about here at NELI. And there are a range of sort of kind of quite complex and interconnected skills that are involved in order to be able to communicate effectively. We tend to break these skills down into receptive versus expressive language, and they're sort of divided into 2 sides on the slide, but to be honest, it's actually more of a cyclical process. So that's kind of how you need to think of it. It's a constant interaction between speaking and listening when we're communicating with someone else. And I should say that if you're finding any of this interesting, this sort of underlying aspects of oral language, then you'll be pleased to know that the first NELI training course covers the fundamentals of oral language in detail. So if you haven't already completed the training, then you have all of this to look forward to. Okay, so let's see if anyone's replied. So yes, in terms of why having good oral language is important. So Claire said to express yourself clearly, to communicate with others. Imogen says that you can say what they want to say to others. Lydia says confidence. Kelly says communicate their needs. Yes, exactly. So being able to express themselves, to communicate with peers. So there's that sort of perhaps that friendship building aspect. Yep, so Sarah made the connection with literacy. Absolutely, I'm going to be speaking about that a little bit more in a moment. Yeah, it relieves frustration, making feelings known, asking for help when needed. Yes, that's another important one. Having that relationship with you guys as educators, to be able to ask for help, and to be able to communicate what they're learning as well. So these are all really good answers. So yes, there is now a huge body of evidence that shows that oral language skills form the foundation for formal education. Children do need good oral language in order to succeed in literacy, but also in maths, and really across the whole curriculum, because language underpins our ability to acquire the knowledge that teachers are teaching us, and to understand the concepts that we're being taught, and also to communicate that understanding back to our educators and to our peers, as someone just mentioned in the Q&A. So really sort of language is the kind of the foundation for education across the curriculum. But as I said, I know that reading and writing is a huge focus in the early years. So how does language relate to reading specifically? Well, when we talk about learning to read, it's really important that we sort of distinguish between two core facets of reading. One of those is decoding, and the other one is comprehension or language comprehension. And research strongly supports the theory that in order to be able to read well, a person must be strong in both of those facets. So they need to be able to decode the words, the print on the page, and then they need to understand what those words mean once they can read them. And decoding and language comprehension are in themselves complex processes with lots of underlying skills. And each of those skills is visualized in something known as Scarborough's rope, which is visualized on the slide here. So in order for the rope, which sort of represents reading comprehension in this context, to be strong, both strands must be strong in themselves. A weakness in one strand, so whether that's either decoding or language comprehension, means that the overall rope is weakened. And actually, recent research also indicates that language skills are the foundation for both decoding and later reading comprehension. So language is actually at the foundation of both of those. For both of those strands of the rope, language is important. So yeah, it's really important that we're sort of putting in place programs to assess language and then kind of plan how to intervene where things aren't where they should be. So it's fantastic that you're looking at something like the NELI Programme. Another reason that it's important to prioritise language intervention is that difficulties with language don't tend to go away on their own. So what you're looking at on the slide here is data from nearly 350,000 LanguageScreen assessments. And if you're new to NELI and you don't know what LanguageScreen is yet, don't worry, because I'll be going through that in a moment. But just to help you understand what you're looking at here. On the y-axis here, we have LanguageScreen scores. So the higher the score, the better a child's language, and vice versa. And along the x-axis here, we have the children's age going from 3.5 years old up to 8.5 years old. And what you can see is at 3.5, the range of LanguageScreen scores is really quite wide. So we have some children who are doing really well up here, and then some children who are essentially near floor. Apologies. And then this is the median here in the middle. And as the children are getting older, you can see that the median is going up, as you would expect. The range is getting smaller. Most children are improving. But what you can also see is that there's this sort of long tails of underperformance that are remaining in place right up until that 8.5 year group. And so what that shows is that these children who are sort of at the bottom at the start tend to stay at the bottom, and all that happens is that the gap between them and their peers tends to get wider. So that's the idea behind a programme like NELI, is to kind of close that gap as early as possible. So why else is it important to have good oral language skills? Well, this is what a lot of you guys were saying, is that it's sort of pivotal in being able to form friendships, to kind of build relationships with other children, to kind of share your experiences, to empathise, to cooperate, to play, all of those things which are so important in being able to build relationships with your peers. Someone also said about expressing their emotions. Absolutely. Language also helps you to kind of regulate your own behavior. It sort of gives you that power of self-talk. And of course, if you're not able to make yourself understood, then that can be an extremely frustrating and isolating experience. So language is really important there. And so I'll just wrap up this section just by talking about how the NELI programme helps to solve this problem. And the reason I spend a moment on this is because I know that this programme requires a real chunk of your time and resources. And so you want to kind of be confident that you're using those resources wisely. And you can be. So to the best of our knowledge, NELI is the best evidenced language intervention that is currently available. It's been tested through multiple randomized control trials, and it's also been tested through multiple independent evaluations outside of trial conditions as well. And each time it's been found to significantly improve children's language skills as well as their behavior in the classroom. And we have also found that NELI's effect on language is long-lasting, and it also has long-term benefits for word reading as well. So that real tangible impact on literacy development that I know we're all so keen on. Okay. All right, so let's get into the programme itself. So here's a sort of a simple view of how most people deliver the NELI programme over a school year. So the first step is the LanguageScreen assessments, which should be completed with all children in the class, and ideally at the start and end of the year before delivering NELI and after delivering NELI. Then is the online training, and that teaches practitioners how to it teaches you about oral language development, as I mentioned earlier, and then it prepares you to deliver the NELI sessions as well. And then, of course, there's the intervention itself, which is 20 weeks long and is divided into two 10-week parts. And I will go into each of these elements in a little bit more detail, starting with LanguageScreen. So LanguageScreen is an online currently app-based assessment, which is suitable for children aged 3 to 11 years. And what it does is it provides an objective measure of a child's language ability, and it takes about 5 to 12 minutes to do that with each child. What's so fantastic about LanguageScreen is that you don't need any kind of specialist training in order to use it. You don't even need to have done the NELI training. That's a totally separate set of training. You don't need to kind of have any specialist knowledge or experience in order to be able to do it. And yet The results that you will get from those LanguageScreen assessments have been found to be just as accurate as kind of traditional pen and paper assessments carried out by speech and language specialists. That the results of LanguageScreen has been validated against these traditional tests in an RCT. So the idea is that this assessment can be used by staff within your school to kind of support the work that speech and language professionals and your SENCO will already be doing. So what's actually being tested? Well, it assesses children's levels of expressive and receptive vocabulary, their listening comprehension skills, and their understanding of sentence structure. So there's 4 subtests. In the expressive vocabulary subtest, the children will see a series of pictures, and they'll just need to name those pictures. Then in the listening comprehension subtest, they hear a series of short stories, and they're asked a selection of questions about those stories. Then in the receptive vocabulary subtest, they will hear a word, and they will need to select the picture on the screen that matches the word that they've heard. And then in sentence repetition, they will hear a sentence and they need to repeat that sentence back verbatim. And that's sort of assessing their understanding of sentence structures and grammar. So then the children's scores on each of those subtests are standardized according to their age. And that standardization happens using our database of assessments, which now totals well over 500,000. I think we're over 600,000 assessments. So that standardization is based on an absolutely huge database of language data nationally. And the report that's provided will flag any children that are essentially scoring lower than you would expect for their age. There is no complicated data entry required. As soon as you've assessed a child, you click upload at the end, and the report is there ready for you as soon as you log into your OCSED account. And the report can be generated for a whole school, for a year group, for a class, but you will also get an individual report as well for each child. And the idea is that that individual report can be sort of separated out and shared with parents or speech and language professionals or whoever is involved in the support for that child. You will also have a results summary table of all the children that you've assessed, ranked by their standard score, with the children with the lowest standard scores at the top so that you can see them sort of most easily and quickly. But also to make it easier, we use a traffic light system with red, amber and green. So if a child is flagged as red, that means that they have clear language difficulties. Their standard score puts them in the bottom 10% for children of their age. These are children that would really definitely benefit from a language intervention like NELI. If a child is flagged as amber, that means that there's sort of a slight concern. Their language is, their standard score puts them in the bottom 10 to 20% for their age. And if they are flagged as green, then that means that their language score doesn't sort of indicate or sort of doesn't present concerns. It means that their language is in the above the bottom 20% for their age. Now, I should say that that doesn't mean that they wouldn't benefit from any language intervention. If you have a class where all of your children are ambers and greens, or even all greens, you can absolutely still run NELI to support those children that are at the bottom. But the traffic light system is just there to kind of help you prioritise if you do have sort of a range of needs. We do have enhanced reports coming, and we hope that the improvements and upgrades that we're making will make it even easier for you to be able to see how your cohort's LanguageScreen scores have changed over time, for you to be able to track progress, and also for you to be able to compare different groups of children as well. Also, if you are using our Reading Screen app as well, if you assess a child with both LanguageScreen and Reading Screen, then you do get their results plotted against a two-dimensional simple view of reading graph. And the idea is that it will just provide you with some greater insights into any potential language or reading difficulties. And just if you're not familiar with the simple view of reading, it's actually kind of another way of visualizing the reading rope that we looked at earlier. So language comprehension is on one axis and decoding is on the other. And it just allows you to kind of quickly and easily see if children have weaknesses in one area or another area, or actually both areas. And then it just helps you to kind of put in place the appropriate support. Okay, so in terms of kind of getting up and running with LanguageScreen, the very first thing that you'll want to do is to upload the data for your new cohort of children into the OCSED system. So you'll want to log into oxedandassessment.com and go to the Import Pupils tab. And that will allow you to populate a template spreadsheet with your pupil data and upload it in order to register a whole class of children all in one go. And to make this process a little bit easier, we have a review page. This is relatively new, I think, in the last year or two. So if anyone's coming back to using LanguageScreen from quite a few years ago, this might be new to you. So there's a review page here that sort of gives you the chance to check the data before it's imported. And if there are any problems, it tells you exactly where the problem is and what the problem is so that you can correct it. Okay, so then once your pupils have been registered in the system, you can go to the QR codes tab and download a PDF of your class's codes. Each code is linked to a child, and you should use the same code each time that you assess a child, whether that's with LanguageScreen or Reading Screen. And whether it's the beginning of the year, the end of the year, it doesn't matter. Just use the same code, and all of that data will be linked back to that child's profile. I should say at this point that the reason we use the codes is that it means that all of the data, the sort of personally identifiable data for the children, is stored only on our secure systems. It's never stored on the device that you are using to complete the assessment. And obviously this is just more secure in general, that's why we do it. But the benefit of it is that it also allows you to use, if you're able to, if your school's policy allows it, you can use personal devices to complete the assessments, if needs be, if you don't have a school tablet available or something like that. I would say that if you are someone who is using LanguageScreen for the first time this year, I'd strongly recommend that you run a practice assessment. If you go either onto our website or if you have got to the point where you've uploaded your children's data and you've printed out your QR codes, on the front there is a practice QR code that you can use. It'll just give you a good sense of what the assessment is like. And if there are any problems, then it means that you can get in touch with us and we can sort of help you to solve them before you're ready to kind of properly get into your assessments. So then, of course, you need to make sure that you've downloaded your LanguageScreen app. That's available from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, depending on the device that you're using. If you have already had the app downloaded sometime previously, it's always worth just checking whether you maybe it needs updating. You can always delete it and download it again, as long as there's no assessment stored on the device. You're fine to delete it. It won't delete anything else, and then just download it again, or you can just update it just to make sure that you've got the latest version. Okay, so once you have your QR codes, once you've got the app, then you're ready to start assessing with LanguageScreen. You can start this whenever you like. If you know your children best, you'll know sort of when's the right time to start doing the assessments with them. Lots of schools do wait until sort of after October half term to allow the children time to settle in. But if you think if they're ready and you want to get started, then you can absolutely get started earlier. And And in the meantime, if you want any more guidance or information, you can scan more QR codes. You can scan the QR codes on the slide here, and that will take you to some guidance on our website and also on our YouTube channel, where we have some sort of step-by-step instructional videos to kind of guide you through the assessment process. Okay, so onto the online NELI training, which teaches you how to deliver NELI. So the training consists of several linked courses. So the first one is Language Fundamentals, which covers some of the bits that I kind of was talking about right at the beginning, but obviously in a lot more depth. So kind of the importance of good oral language development and the core sort of language skills that children need, as well as some kind of key teaching strategies that are used in the programme. And then there are courses which teach you how to deliver the NELI sessions. And there's also the NELI Support Hub, which includes sort of lots of additional information, some example sessions, some real-life example sessions, example assessment sheets and record forms and so on, so that you can see how all of those work. All of the training and the hub are all live mentored. So if you ask a question on there, there will be a real human being that answers you. Hopefully there'll be a place for you guys to just come together, learn from each other as well, and support each other as well. Now, for those of you who are veterans of NELI and have completed your NELI training some time ago, we do also have a refresher training course. This is also CPD accredited, just like the rest of the training, and it just kind of picks up on the main elements of the NELI training, so you can kind of refresh your knowledge. It's open to anyone who's already completed the NELI training courses. So if you want to be sent an invitation, just email us on support@teachneli.org. So in terms of getting started with the training, if you're an owner or an admin of your school's account on oxedandassessment.com, you can now invite staff to the online training direct from our training page, and you can also track their progress as they move through the course modules. If you are a trainee, then you'll be able to see your own training progress, but you'll need to ask an owner or admin if anybody else needs to be added. When you log in, you'll be able to see what your sort of status is on the screen. It's at the top. So if you know that you've been invited to the training, you'll just need to look out for an email from pleasedonotReply@futurelearn.com. The invitation that you receive will be an invitation to course 1, which is that Language Fundamentals course. And then once you're enrolled on that, you can then sort of enroll yourself on the next courses using the links at the end of each one. And then that's it. Once you're enrolled, you can start working your way through the content. And as I said, I think one of the main bits of advice I have is just to really make use of that comment section to interact with other practitioners, to ask questions, yeah, sort of make good use of that kind of community of practice that you've got available to you there. Okay, so then moving on to the intervention itself. So as many of you will know, NELI is a 20-week programme for children with poor language skills, and it's designed to improve vocabulary, to develop narrative skills, and also to develop active listening skills, and to ultimately build confidence in speaking. It's fully scripted, and there are instructions provided in the teaching handbooks, which are sent to your school as part of the sort of NELI kit. And alongside the handbooks, there are sort of a big pile of flashcards and posters and things. And then there's a TED puppet as well. TED is the NELI mascot who is there to kind of encourage good behaviour and active listening in the programme. Just so you're aware, there's also NELI Whole Class, which is an add-on to the NELI intervention, and it's designed to be delivered by a teacher to the whole class over 3 sessions per week, with the idea of kind of complementing and reinforcing the work that you are carrying out in your intervention sessions in order to boost the language skills of the whole class. So how does it all work together? Well, NELI uses a recurring schedule of small group and individual sessions, with each session building on the content of the one before in order to kind of carefully scaffold those children's learning over the course of the 20 weeks. Both strands of the intervention, so the group and the individual sessions, sort of work together in tandem. And together they provide a really nice, supportive, reassuring environment for the children to kind of practice their new skills. Then NELI Whole Class sort of runs alongside and provides opportunities for the NELI children to kind of then use their developing skills out in a new context, and with their peers. It allows them to kind of participate in classroom activities which they might not have been able to otherwise. And of course, it also helps you to provide a language-rich environment for all of the children in your class, so including those that aren't receiving the intervention, and using a lot of the same strategies that are employed in NELI as well. So at this stage, kind of the first step to sort of get ready for delivering NELI is to plan your delivery timeline. Again, when you start is up to you. Some schools like to start sort of, they get Christmas out the way and then they start when they come back in January, but others like to kind of get going in autumn term. It's totally up to you, but it is always helpful to build in time for unexpected delays. You can plan as best as possible, but there's often unexpected things that come up, which mean that you need to pause delivery, or things just take a little bit longer than you would expect. The important thing is always just to leave enough time at the end so that you can re-complete your LanguageScreen assessments with all the children, as this will allow you to kind of see the progress that's been made over the course of the year. If you are delivering NELI for the first time this year, you will need to prepare and organise your NELI resources. It can take a little bit of time, but it's sort of really worth it to make sure that the programme is much more kind of pick up and go once you get started. There's guidance for how you can do this on the hub if you need it. Lots of you have been delivering NELI for a while, so you will already have your resources ready, but you may have found that some bits have gone missing over the years. If that's the case, then head over to the NELI section of the Pearson UK website, where you can buy replacement parts, and that's the QR code that's on the screen now. We'll take you there. Okay, and then, yeah, I've said it already, but just the final thing would just be to make sure that you're kind of really making use of that community of practice, building connections both within the school and outside of the school with people involved in the NELI programme. This is, it's a significant commitment that you're undertaking by taking part in this programme. So it's good for you to feel like you're kind of part of a community that understands why you're running this intervention, and the fantastic impact that it's going to have. Okay, so I said that I always overrun, and I've overrun even more than I said I was going to, so I'm sorry about that. But I just wanted to wrap up with a few questions that you guys had submitted through the registration form. I hope that you've also been submitting questions into the Q&A and keeping Kevin nice and busy. If you have any more questions, please do continue to put those into the Q&A. In the meantime, I'll just wrap up with these 3 questions. So someone asked in the form, can I learn enough to manage NELI without doing the whole training? So yes, if you are not going to be actually delivering any sessions yourself, then we only really recommend that you complete the very first course, that Language Fundamentals course. I mentioned that there's lots of sort of theoretical background stuff about NELI and language in there, which you may find useful, but there is also a short overview of the NELI programme in terms of timetable, resources, and so on. So by doing that first course, you'll get a good idea of how best to kind of support the practitioner that's going to be actually delivering the sessions, without having to complete the full training. That first course we estimate takes between 4 and 5 hours. You may be able to go through it a bit quicker than that, but that's the bit that we would really recommend you do. if you're just sort of overseeing the programme. Then someone asked, if time is short, is it better to carry out individual sessions on the same day as group sessions, or to just deliver to less children overall? So yes, I mean, actually, I didn't include it in this presentation, but our recommended timetable is that you deliver group sessions on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and individual sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. However, that is just a suggestion. The reason we suggest that is to kind of space the group and individual sessions out, gives the children a little bit more time to kind of process all that new stuff that they're learning. However, you can adapt the timetable to suit you. If there's a day that doesn't work, you can't deliver any sessions on that day, or if there's one day where you have lots more time and then another day where you don't really have very much time at all, then you can absolutely kind of condense it if you need to deliver a group and an individual session on the same day. That's no problem at all. And then the last question was, could you, basically, how can we support when there are lots more children than the 4 to 5 children per class that we recommend going into a NELI session, that need language support? So yeah, this is a big one. We know that it's going to be on a lot of schools' minds, especially as the kind of COVID babies are kind of coming into reception this year. So our first port of call would always be to deliver more NELI groups if you have the resources available to do that. The NELI training is not limited to certain members of staff. So if you have a NELI training subscription at your school, you can enroll as many people as you like to do that training. So if you have the staff to be able to deliver more groups, then that would be our recommended suggestion, is to train someone else up and have them deliver some NELI. However, if the resources don't allow for multiple NELI groups, I would still say that the training is your friend here. I mentioned that in the first course there are some teaching strategies that are employed in, we talk through some teaching strategies that are used in NELI. Obviously, some of those are quite specific to how the programme is set up and designed, but a lot of them can just be used out in the classroom. Things like modelling and scaffolding and so on. All of these things can be used either in a structured way, if you're sort of setting up lessons purposely to support language, but also just in everyday conversations with children, kind of making sure that all staff are aware and trained up on how to have language-rich conversations with children will already be a massive help. But if you are interested in running a sort of set curriculum for supporting language, then NELI whole class also might be a good option for you, because that basically gives you all the tools you need to be able to deliver kind of high quality language lessons every week for 20 weeks or more. Okay, so thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our time together. If you have any further questions or you want some help with getting started with any aspect of the NELI programme, please just scan the QR code on the slide. That will take you to the calendar of our support team, and you can book in a support session where you can get on the phone or a video call with someone from the support team, and they'll be able to help you get set up. As always, look out for future invitations to more webinars. Please email me if you have any suggestions of stuff that you would like me to cover in future sessions. We're probably going to be running a couple of webinars per term this year. And also, if you're interested in showcasing your NELI delivery, if you're one of these schools that has been delivering for many years and you want to show off on how you're delivering it, then please come along. But also, if you're new to the programme, we'd very much welcome your input as well. Yes, I think that's it. So thank you very much, and hope to see you again soon.